It always starts the same way. You feel the tension before you can name it. That subtle pressure, not from the world, but from within. Like there's some invisible rope in your chest being pulled tight. Not because something's wrong, but because you think you're supposed to be the one keeping it all together. And maybe you are, right? After all, you've been told your whole life, be responsible, stay on top of things, fix what's broken, control what you can. So you try, you tighten your grip, you double check your emotions, you rehearse conversations in your head, you plan your day, your future, your healing, all of it. And slowly, without even noticing, you start living like someone running mission control for a life that's not even unfolding the way you planned it. You track every shift, you analyze every moment, and underneath all of it, you're tired. But no one sees that, because control looks responsible. It looks mature. On the outside, it looks like you figured things out. But on the inside, it feels like you're trying to hold back the tide with your bare hands. And here's the truth. You were never meant to carry that much. Not because you're incapable, but because life was never asking you to solve it. It was asking you to be in it, to feel it, to move with it. Control isn't safety, it's a distraction. And the more you cling to it, the more disconnected you become, not from others, but from yourself. Because the real you isn't a strategist or a fixer. The real you doesn't need a plan to feel at peace. The real you just wants to exhale. You know what control really is. It's a clever disguise. It looks like strength, but most of the time, it's fear wearing a suit. The fear of what might happen if you don't double check, if you don't say the perfect thing, if you let the day just unfold without managing every edge. It's not that you're obsessed with control, it's that a younger version of you learned that chaos hurts, that uncertainty is dangerous, that if you let go, things fall apart. And that version of you, they're still in there, still trying to protect you, still pulling the strings. So you build little systems in your head. You pre-live situations in your mind. You calculate what you'll say if this happens, and how you'll respond if that happens. It's not because you're intense. It's because you're trying to stay safe in a world that never offered guarantees. But here's the strange part. The more you try to control life, the smaller it becomes. You stop taking chances. You stop listening to what you feel. You stop trusting your own timing. Because control doesn't leave room for intuition. It needs proof. It needs certainty. And that demand for certainty is what starts to choke your spirit. You weren't made for that. You weren't designed to run endless mental simulations. You weren't built to carry every outcome like it's your personal assignment. You were meant to move, to trust, to flow. That doesn't mean you don't make plans. It means your peace doesn't depend on them working out exactly as you imagined. Because when you loosen your grip, just a little, strange things begin to happen. Conversations unfold more naturally. People show up in unexpected ways. Solutions appear without being forced. You realize that half the things you were holding so tightly, they weren't yours to carry in the first place. Letting go isn't giving up. It's finally admitting that you're not the director of this movie. You're just an actor in this scene, and your job is to show up, not to rewrite the script mid-take. And once you feel that for real, you stop bracing. You stop managing every breath. And your life starts to breathe on its own again. There's a quiet kind of wisdom that doesn't get much attention, mostly because it isn't loud and it doesn't look impressive. It's the kind of wisdom that knows when to stop talking, that knows when to let go, that knows not everything needs to be named or handled or healed right now. You don't see it trending, you don't hear it quoted much, because it doesn't promise results or offer 10-step plans. It just whispers, "You're allowed to rest from holding the universe together." But most people never hear it, because they're too busy trying to earn peace by performing clarity. We've been conditioned to chase control like it's the final level of emotional evolution. But control isn't the goal. Capacity is. The capacity to be in discomfort without scrambling for answers. The capacity to witness pain without needing to immediately define it. The capacity to stand in front of the unknown and not turn it into a project. Because the truth is, the moments that change you the most aren't the ones you figured out in advance. They're the ones you stayed with, the ones you didn't run from, the ones you sat inside even when they made no sense. And that's what this is about. Not surrender in the romantic polished sense, but the everyday kind, the kind that says, I'm not going to force this moment to mean something it doesn't. I'm not going to twist this feeling into a solution. I'm just going to be here, even if that means doing nothing. That's not passivity. That's presence. And presence is what control tries to replace, but never can. Because no matter how smart your strategy is, or how spiritual your mindset becomes, nothing can substitute for the honesty of simply being here, not thinking about how to improve here, not planning your way out of here, just being in it. And maybe that's the real practice, to stop over-managing your life like a job you're scared to lose, to let moments unfold without always needing to rearrange them into comfort, because something beautiful happens when you stop being the supervisor of your own existence. You start becoming something else entirely, not the master of your life, but the listener of it. It's strange, isn't it? How the tightest grip often comes from the softest kind of fear. Not panic, not chaos, but that quiet, unspoken feeling that if you don't hold it all together, no one else will. Maybe that's why control becomes a habit, because nobody teaches you how to live inside uncertainty. They teach you how to avoid it, fix it, fight it, but not how to simply sit with it. So when life doesn't move in straight lines, which it rarely does, we start trying to fix the curve instead of learning to move with it. But here's the part no one says out loud. Control might keep you safe, but it will also keep you small. It will keep your days clean but empty, your relationships predictable but surface level, your creativity muted, your instincts second-guessed, your heart guarded like a locked room no one gets access to, not even you. And here's what's worse. After a while, control doesn't feel like something you do anymore. It starts to feel like something you are. You become the person who always has a plan, the one who keeps calm, stays 2 steps ahead, handles everything. And people rely on you for that, which only makes it harder to step out of that role. But deep down, you know what it's costing you. Because there's a part of you, maybe quiet, maybe buried, that misses the unknown, that misses spontaneity, that misses letting a moment just happen without performance, without strategy, without calculating who you're supposed to be in it. That part of you misses life, not the version you can control, but the version you can feel. And when you start honoring that feeling, not rushing to fix it, just noticing it, something opens. You begin to remember that you're not here to micromanage reality. You're here to witness it, to participate in it, to be shaped by it, not just steer it. And that realization doesn't make you powerless. It makes you available to joy that isn't scheduled, to lessons that weren't in your curriculum, to healing that arrives when you least expect it, not because you earned it, but because you finally stopped trying so hard. The strange thing is, the more you try to control life, the more you start missing it. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because control changes how you see everything. You stop seeing things for what they are, and you start seeing them for how they could go wrong. You don't hear what people say. You scan for what they might mean. You don't enjoy the silence. You prepare for what could happen after it ends. Control teaches you to treat every moment like a potential threat, and every feeling like a situation to resolve. Even joy becomes suspicious. If something feels too good, your mind quietly whispers, "Don't get used to this." If someone gets too close, you instinctively build a backup plan in your head, not because you don't care, but because a part of you decided long ago that being ready for the worst was smarter than simply being open. But that part of you, it's tired, not because it's weak, but because it's been working overtime to keep you safe in a life that was never meant to be controlled in the first place. Somewhere deep inside, you already know this. You've had moments, quiet, small ones, where something slipped through the cracks, where you forgot to manage everything, where you said what you meant without rehearsing, where you were fully there, not because you tried, but because you finally forgot to try. And in those moments, something deeper moved. You felt alive, not prepared, present, not productive, at peace, not because you solved anything, but because you stopped looking for an angle. That's what this is about. Not forcing life to match your expectations, but learning how to meet it without the armor. Because what if nothing's wrong with you? What if it's not a flaw that you can't stay in control all the time? What if that's actually a signal that your mind has done enough? And now it's time to let your presence do the rest. Not everything has to be optimized. Not every space has to be filled. Not every question deserves an answer. Some parts of life just want to be witnessed, not solved. There's something we don't talk about enough: how lonely control can feel. Because when you're constantly managing outcomes, emotions, expectations, you stop showing people who you really are. You show them the edited version, the filtered self, polished, composed, safe. You keep things in check. You smile when you're supposed to. You say you're fine even when you're holding back a flood. Not because you're fake, but because you think it's your job to keep everything calm. And slowly, the people around you start responding to the version of you that performs peace, not the one that actually needs it. That's when it gets heavy. Because now, not only are you trying to hold your own world together, you're trying to hold a version of yourself that's always okay. And that mask is expensive, and it costs you depth. It costs you honesty. And worst of all, it costs you connection. Because control, at its core, says, I'll handle this alone. But you weren't built to live that way. You weren't meant to carry every burden quietly. You weren't supposed to be the strong one all the time. There is strength in letting someone see you without the strategy, without the plan, without the perfect language. Just you, raw, uncertain, and real. And this isn't just about relationships. It's about how you relate to life itself. Because when you stop hiding behind control, something incredible happens. Life starts meeting you as you are, not as who you're pretending to be. You start attracting people who can hold space for the mess, not just the mask. You find beauty in the undone. You find breath in the unfinished. You realize not every moment has to be tidy to be meaningful. And when you show up without needing to control the result, you start discovering who's really with you and who just liked the version of you that was always fine. This isn't a weakness, it's a return to what's human, what's soft, what's honest. And for the first time, maybe in a long time, you're no longer performing safety. You're actually living inside it. So maybe the question was never, how do I stay in control? Maybe the real question is, what part of me still believes I have to? Because somewhere along the way, that belief took root. That if you don't hold everything together, it'll all fall apart. That peace is something you earn by being sharp, prepared, ahead of the curve. That letting go is dangerous, or worse, irresponsible. But here's what nobody ever said when you were growing up. Letting go is not the absence of care. It's the presence of trust. You don't let go because you stopped caring. You let go because you finally realized you're allowed to care without carrying everything. You're allowed to not have an answer. You're allowed to feel overwhelmed. You're allowed to say, I don't know what's next, but I'll be here when it comes. Because control always says, I need to manage this. But presence says, I'm willing to meet this. And those are two completely different ways of living. Control keeps you performing. Presence keeps you available. Control asks, what will this lead to? Presence asks, what is this right now? And in that space, the real transformation begins. Not because you figured everything out, but because you finally stopped forcing it. That's when you start to heal in ways no self-help book can teach. That's when your relationships deepen, not because you're saying the right things, but because you're showing up without armor. That's when your nervous system starts to believe you're safe, not because your circumstances are perfect, but because you're not at war with every little unknown. And that's when peace doesn't feel like a moment. It feels like a way of being, not loud, not flashy, just real. So maybe this isn't a grand realization. Maybe it's a quiet return, back to something ancient in you, the part that was always here, beneath the plans and panic and polished identities, the part that knew, even as a child, that life was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be lived. And if this video helped you remember that, even for just one breath, one moment of stillness, let it be more than a passive experience. Scroll down and type one word in the comments. Release. Not for the algorithm, but for you. A soft declaration that you're choosing to loosen your grip, that you're letting life move without needing to rewrite every page as it's written, that you're done managing your humanity like a project. Let it be your signal to yourself, to the universe, that you are no longer building your peace on control. And if this kind of message is something you want more of, real, human, unpolished truth, subscribe to the channel. We don't chase perfection here. We chase honesty, and we learn not how to control life, but how to finally meet it as it is, as we are, fully here,